They say that print is dead, and I'm not really inclined to disagree with them, whoever they are. Printed press is not really doing well. It has been doing well for almost a decade now, mostly because everything it does has been replaced by everything else that's come in the last half century. Television, radio, and the one that really hit the nail on the head, the nail in the coffin of course, internet. There's nothing that print media can do that internet media cannot also do. Only on the internet things can move faster, they can move more accurately because there's always room to correct a mistake. There's no such thing as not enough space, mostly just people not having the patience to read everything. And when it comes to video games, this is probably even more true than it is for other types of subjects covered by the media. We've seen so many gaming magazines just completely die in the last couple of years. And the thing is, they didn't die out because they were replaced by gaming websites that offer better coverage of video games. They died because of YouTube. They died because people don't need to know someone else's opinion about a game because they can see somebody playing it and have a complete opinion about a game just by looking at it. They have perfect knowledge, well, almost perfect knowledge of the game without any room for the interpretation of someone else. And also we have demos, well, not a lot of them, but we do have piracy, so that's a thing, and trial versions. And if you want the odd editorial, you can find those as well on the internet. You can find them in extra hour-long forms on YouTube. You are spoiled for choice. You have no reason to miss gaming magazines, no actual reason, other than maybe a sense of nostalgia. The footage on the background is my collection of gaming related and some computing related magazines. There are not a lot of them. I mean, I've seen some other people's collections and they have countless. Prior to the year 2000, I could not afford to buy one. In that year, I bought two of them. They were PC Games magazines. The next year, I bought my first edition of Level, which was a very popular and long-lasting game magazine from Romania. Well, it was in Turkey. It was in a lot of places, but the one in Romania is the one I'm referring to. And over the course of that year, I bought, I believe, 2 more numbers of Level and 2 more of PC Games. Then the next year, probably 2 magazines. The point is, I couldn't really afford to buy all the ones I wanted, just the ones I could. I even have a few numbers of Extreme PC, and at one time I did have one from Game Over, which was sort of the seminal video game related magazine from Romania. I gave that copy away to a friend of mine because he had a bigger collection of Game Over magazines, and well, I think it was better off with him. I remember that number having a review of Final Fantasy VII in it, or a preview or something. I didn't buy it, I just got it once and gave it away. I'm looking at them again, even though we're in the age of the internet where you can have pretty much anything you would want, any sort of information you would wish for at your fingertips. Looking through them again just fills you with a sense, or at least it fills me with a sense of nostalgia and something different. There was more to these magazines than just reviews, than just commercials for video games. There was a show to them. There was an ounce of pageantry, I guess would be the term. They didn't just give you information about the game, they presented the game, they illustrated what the game could be. And they did not do that through words, through the actual articles written, but through the way the pages were laid out, through the artwork they used, much of which is very hard to get. There's usually press kits that back then were, well, they're not even easy to get now, but back then they were basically non-existent for anybody outside the media. And people didn't just stop with writing a preview or an article or something about a game. They did things with them. It wasn't even just editorials. One of the bits I really loved about the PC Games magazine is that they had a walkthrough-ish kind of section, one in which in one number they basically explained Diablo 2 as well, no, even better than one of the old FAQs could. I loved reading FAQs back in the day because I couldn't really play games. I just had the DHL installed because it was on one of these CDs, and I used to read all of the FAQs for the games I was interested in. And this article did better than that that FAQ. It did so because it had the pictures and it had them so painstakingly just listed there. All the items in the game, all the unique ones, all the said ones, all beautifully organized. It told you how to get to the cow level. It showed you in so great detail everything you would need to do, everything you could do. And I wasn't reading that because, oh, I have to know how to do this in Diablo. I can't figure it out on my own. I didn't even have Diablo. I didn't have a computer back then. I read it because it was an adventure unto itself, walking through the game via this medium. It's sort of how people feel nowadays about Let's Plays. But this one, I don't know, it had a bit more value to it because there was a lot of my imagination in there, and there was so much more because they also published walkthroughs of Age of Empires 2 and of Red Alert 2. This is where I first saw Red Alert, in this magazine, and it had a walkthrough with all the maps, just the entire map, no fog of war, no darkness, the whole map with the objectives, with some arrows, and I would just look at the maps and study them and think to myself, oh, I would have gone this way and done that and gotten there, even though I had no idea what I was supposed to do in that game. I had no clue what the units were, what they were capable of, what the idea was. I just knew that there were some cows and exploding and towers that shot lasers at each other. Now, of course, these weren't perfect magazines, especially PC Games. PC Games was a German magazine. I'm not sure if it's still around. We had a badly translated version of the PC Games from Germany. Sometimes with very, very bad, and I mean horrible defects in terms of how they were built. They had pages that were flipped upside down, pages that weren't glued on properly, but it still had things like a 2-page spread of something they call the Pixel Wonder, where they would show you a scene from a game, something like Baldur's Gate or Desperados, and that just filled you with awe, with amazement that the game could look so good. It was basically several screens glued together to make up a bigger image. Really well done, and it made it look superb. Some of the other magazines tried to do their own things. Extreme PC was in the habit of writing fake reviews for fake games. There was one about mice. There was an ad in there about a World War shooter type game about pensioners who are upset about their pensions. There's a thing about pensioners in Romania because the state pays all the pensions, and by the state I mean the people that are employed and pay taxes, and it's a fun Eastern European thing. It's horrible. And going back to PC Games again, it had a really weird thing where every review of a game had the chart to it that showed you how emotionally invested you would be in the game, or how excited you would be. You'd go from boredom to exhilaration to frustration. They had a chart that was basically meaningless, but it was amazing. And they did have something useful, like a gigantic, and I mean gigantic chart of how well the game can run on certain configurations, and they had a bunch of them there, with non-playable, playable, sort of playable, works well, maybe a minimum, and so forth. And again, in PC Games' case, it was a horrible translation that would butcher a single joke so that it made no sense. But it looked amazing. All the screenshots, all the images. It's possibly because at that point I had only played games like on an arcade machine once, and I had a Terminator console, which was basically a sort of NES, and I previously had something that was a clone of the old Atari 2600. But every game they showed looked bonkers amazing by comparison. And again, most of it is true the way that the articles were structured. It wasn't the text itself. I honestly can't remember what most of them were exactly worded like, but I remember the page layout. I remember the images where they were put. I remember the extra things, the extra tidbits, the extra little things. That's what I loved about it. And the extra tiny things, the hey, did you know this? Or also recommended, try this, it's like this, and the charts, the maps, the artworks that I would often trace, and to my shame I actually did just rip out a page or two and try to make some posters out of them, but someone threw them out. Some of them even came with their own posters and gave it to my brother for college, and he lost them. Had a really very, very, very nice one with World War II. That's besides the point. As time went on, things started to change a bit. I sort of felt like gaming magazines were being demystified. There wasn't as much magic to them anymore. They weren't as complex. They weren't as filled with extra features that honestly maybe a lot of people didn't care about, but they added to the show, for me at least. And when I started writing for them, it just kind of teetered off. There's articles written by me in some of these, not under my name because I wasn't writing them directly for the publication, but for a friend who was supposed to be writing them, but he didn't have the time. And somehow I always tend to work with people that will always ask me to do them a solid by writing articles that they then publish in other places. Somehow they're all from Bucharest. I think there's an epidemic there of "can you do me a solid, Titus?" Hey, I got a Team Fortress 2 out of it, so I'm not mad. Also, the articles, some of them, the ones I wrote, like there's one from 13th Century Blood or Glory or something in one of these. It wasn't really great, but the one I wrote about Red Faction Guerrilla, that I was proud of, and I don't even have the magazine where that was published in. But when I started writing for such magazines, everything went to pieces in terms of demystification. You saw how the sausage was made, and unlike actual sausage that I enjoy making, I like it, I'll always like sausages, it was writing an article in a hurry and rush in between other articles and then just plumping it out and throwing it away and giving it to someone else and let them do their thing for me. There wasn't any actual passion in it, any pleasure, any of the attention to detail I had seen in years past in the magazines I previously read years and years ago. And as I said, magazines in this country at least went downhill. They didn't do the extra stuff anymore. They limit themselves to the basics. They try to do articles about artists and video games and Dungeons and Dragons. I actually like that one about the local community of D&D, but for the most part they didn't have that magic anymore that would keep people invested. They became more opinion-based, more review-focused. I'm not saying it's the wrong direction, but they had more to them a long time ago. I know what you're gonna say. What does it matter? I mean, game magazines were always just commercials. If you go back all the way to Nintendo Power, it was just a commercial thing. It was a beloved magazine because it had all the artwork or all the walkthroughs, but it was just a commercial. It wasn't meant to offer any criticism. Yeah, that's okay. It was what it was, and I haven't actually read a Nintendo Power, so I can't say for sure, but the ones I read back then, even though they were horribly translated and made no sense in some parts, they were beautiful, and I treasured them. They are one of the reasons why I'm here today doing what I'm doing, so I should probably blame them as well. They were a product of their time, filled with all sorts of extraneous information and extra tidbits, things that were completely useless to me honestly, like catalogs of games you could buy. I could barely afford a magazine. How was I going to afford a game? During my last years at Games Arena, the place I worked at before this, I actually tried and structure my articles, my reviews at least, a bit in the way that the old articles in the magazines were, with extra boxes of information, of charts and stuff, but it took a whole lot of work, and I was doing daily shows and articles and news, and it's just too much. Way too much. I couldn't even do it when I actually worked on a project that was sort of my own video game magazine. It was a project for a journalism course I was taking. That was our final exam, if you will. It never did get finished because one of the editors just quit, and he was in charge of actually handling stuff like page layouts and stylists stuff and things that required working with InDesign a lot. But his work up until he quit was actually beautiful, but that magazine never saw the light of day. Pieces of it have. The show I did about Tabula Rasa is verbatim an article I wrote in that magazine, that non-existent magazine 10 years ago. Gaming magazines just can't exist like they could a while back. All the information you would want to learn about a game is already out there. There's detailed documentaries about every game you'd ever want to know. You can even talk to the devs over Twitter if you want to. You can tear the game to pieces with so many modern tools. You can see people tearing games to pieces, dissecting them in every way, drawing amazing art that rivals that of the game itself. It's a much bigger world and everything's connected now. Whereas back then, I was alone. And those magazines, those pieces of paper that other people routinely didn't really treat well, they were my gateway, my mirror, my my window into a different world. The fact that I didn't understand half of what they were talking about, that's a whole other matter. Took me a while to realize the difference between an engine and a driver, because an engine driver, they're car things, they're not computer things, are they? Well, they are, sort of, turns out. And what a TBS is, what an RTS is, what an RTT is. If you want to blame the gaming codex on something, blame it on the fact that PC Games had at its end a giant list of like the games that came out in the previous year with every genre just scribbled there. It's a very, very meticulous way of organizing games. We can also blame them for the fact that I really like Riddler 2. It was the first RTS I ever laid eyes on through the magazine, I mean. First one I actually played was StarCraft, I believe. Not that I had any clue what I was doing. It was a time of wonder that I know I'll never get back. I'll just remember it by looking through these magazines that I may have on occasion called comics from the show for I don't know exactly what reason. I was never into comics, I only had one, which was Spider-Man number 2, a Romanian version that was, I think I got it around the year 2000 or something. Oh, and the Mickey Mouse ones, I was big into those in the 90s. I had like 5 numbers in the entire 90s. I'm curious to know, what was your favorite video game magazine? What's your favorite memory of one? Do you think that the new media, internet, YouTube, can ever compare to the wonder, to the sense of discovery and flipping to the pages of a big fat magazine will ever have? I kind of doubt that today's magazines will have the same effect, because now they are bought and paid for. They're nothing more than marketing material, at least the big ones like Game Informer, which is owned by a game retail store whose directive is, oh, you want to be in our stores? Okay, you're gonna have an exclusive article in this magazine that we own. I think PC Gamer's around too, but I never actually read that. Not to be confused with PC Games, which was amazing, even though again the version we got was horribly translated, and at one time, because they were running out of money, they published half of the magazine in PDF format on the CD, so I couldn't read it until I got a CD drive. Oh, it was so sad. I'm probably gonna do a different show with the nostalgia of demo discs and just generally the CDs you would find in old video game magazines. Till then, go pick up an old ancient video game magazine like pre-2002 or 2003, like one of the older ones. You're bound to see something interesting there that will elevate it beyond the spam that you get today in the gaming press, if I can call stuff like Polygon gaming press. Oh my god. The last article I read about a game, like a couple of minutes before starting the show, was Crusader Kings 2 being accused of being, I'm really not sure what, because they used, Paradox used Deus Vult as a motto for encouraging people to get Crusader Kings 2 when it was free on Steam. Should probably also do a show about why it goddamn sucks so much when people with no knowledge about a subject or its culture or its inner workings begin to criticize it. That would be a fun one to do, and I'll probably get demonetized because those people are everywhere. Goodbye.